My office air was still, late afternoon, light painting warm squares across my desk, until an unexpected email notification pinged. A quick glance at the sender, a name unseen in years, shattered the placid surface of my professional world. The attached legal document, with each line I read, felt less like paper and more like an icy current dragging me under. This wasn't merely a business dispute. It was a meticulously concealed, years-long deception concerning the very foundation of my most significant project, one I'd poured my life into. The initial jolt of shock gave way to a profound, sickening stillness as the depth of their betrayal became terrifyingly clear. My carefully constructed reality, once a calm, navigable bay, now felt like a vast, cold ocean, its familiar surface ripped open to reveal treacherous, unknown depths. Every assumption about trust evaporated, leaving behind only the chilling understanding of calculated sabotage. The initial shock, a cold slap to the face, soon gave way to something more insidious, a simmering anger that threatened to consume me. For days, I wrestled with that internal chaos, my mind a storm of what-ifs and how dare theys. Yet, amidst the raw emotional turmoil, a different current began to stir. It wasn't about fury, but finding a quiet clarity, an internal resolve that whispered, resolution, not revenge. The distinction was crucial. Revenge, I realized, was a hot, impulsive act that prolonged the storm. Resolution was the steady hand that steered the ship towards a calm horizon. My response couldn't mirror their noise or their betrayal. Instead, it needed to be like the ocean itself, turbulent on the surface, but deep beneath, an immense, silent power moving with unwavering purpose. This deep current would guide a patient, multi-layered countermove, a methodical unraveling, rather than a lashing out. The truth, when it finally surfaced, wasn't a sudden storm, but a slow, suffocating murk that obscured everything I thought I knew. I had poured years of my life into that venture, developing proprietary algorithms and spearheading client relationships that swelled the initial capital fivefold. My vision, captured in meticulous proposals and early patent filings, was the clear water feeding the entire operation. Yet, as the company grew, a shadow stretched over my contributions. My partner, Alex, slowly but systematically began to recontextualize my work as his own, appropriating my breakthroughs in public statements and sidelining me from key investor meetings. The bright promise of our shared future, once so vivid, faded into a dark reality where my intellectual property became his commodity. Perhaps it was his own quiet anxiety about maintaining relevance, a fear of being seen as less pivotal that led him to dilute my impact. It was a calculated erasure, not of my existence, but of my essentiality. The waters between us, once pristine with mutual trust, had become irrevocably muddied, leaving me to discern not just what times he'd taken, but the deeper currents of how times it had been stolen. The noise of their last desperate maneuvers still rang in the air, a chaotic tempest of accusations and half-truths. Yet, where they saw an opening for more bluster, I found my clarity in silence. Their methods were all superficial, impulsive waves crashing against a temporary shore, quickly spent. My strategy would be the ocean's mind, deep, calm, and encompassing, an enduring force, not a fleeting squall. I would move with quiet, deliberate currents, rather than their loud, reactive thrashing in the shallows. If you've ever felt underestimated, you understand this quiet determination, charting a new, undeviating course. This wasn't about revenge, but meticulous reclamation. Every detail a conscious decision in the vastness of my plan. The quiet that settled wasn't emptiness. It was the charged calm before a storm, an echo chamber for my sharpened resolve. My focus narrowed. Every interaction, a potential breadcrumb, every document a piece of the unfolding narrative. I began meticulously gathering artifacts, methodically pulling every email, every text, every expense report, and bank statement. Screenshots were taken with timestamp verification. Ephemeral chats converted to indelible PDFs. Each piece of digital detritus categorized and backed up across multiple secure drives. This painstaking process of transforming their careless digital footprint into irrefutable evidence contrasted sharply with their assumption of my passivity. My initial legal consultations felt less about immediate aggression and more about a geological survey, understanding the bedrock of the law and the treacherous fault lines beneath. Lawyers confirmed the meticulousness needed. A legal filing wasn't a snap decision, but a carefully choreographed dance of waiting periods and procedural steps. A 45-day discovery period here, a mandatory mediation window there, each bureaucratic friction adding a layer of realism to the clockwork precision required. It was a deep dive, like charting the currents of an unfamiliar ocean. My days were spent sifting through archives, digital ledgers, and obscure appendices, a meticulous digital forensics operation. Every digital trace, every historical document, was examined with the precision of a cartographer mapping unknown waters. I wasn't just looking for mistakes. I was charting the entire ecosystem, understanding its depths, and hidden hazards. Then, buried deep within an overlooked 80-page service agreement they dismissed as boilerplate, a single, unassuming clause caught my eye. It was an indemnification provision, strangely specific, yet entirely missed in their confident oversimplification. This was the unseen current, a powerful, quiet force running beneath their complacent assumptions. The discovery was less a moment of triumph and more a quiet click of a tumbler's, signaling the path forward. The quiet after I set things in motion wasn't emptiness, it was the calm before the first wave. He, of course, remained oblivious, sending curt emails about business as usual, confident in his unchallenged domain. Then came the internal memo, deceptively bland, strategic reorganization of key operational divisions. It landed on a Tuesday, buried in the all-staff updates, yet its implications were a seismic tremor, disguised as a whisper. His fortress of direct reporting lines suddenly dissolved, dispersed under a newly formed advisory board, a board I had quietly helped architect. The news wasn't a shout, but a low, persistent hum that began to penetrate his once impermeable calm. I pictured him staring at the email, the words coalescing into something he couldn't ignore, like watching the tide slowly creep over the sandcastle he'd built. The landscape of his control was subtly shifting, and he was just beginning to feel the chill. The initial silence of their disbelief shattered quickly into a predictable cacophony. Phone calls started within hours. Then, a flurry of aggressive emails from their hastily assembled legal team, filled with bluster and thinly veiled threats. They attempted to discredit my actions publicly, trying to create chaos where I had sought clarity. It was a desperate pushback, a frantic attempt to minimize their exposure and regain control. But I had anticipated every move. A week later, a motion was filed, contesting a technicality in the deed transfer, citing an obscure, minor clerical error from years prior. It was a transparent stall tactic, designed to exhaust my resources and my patience. Yet, my composure, like the ocean, ran deep. I simply forwarded the filing to my counsel. We had already anticipated such a maneuver, drafting a counter-argument that negated their claims with surgical precision. Their chaotic efforts merely met the unwavering resolve of an ocean's mind, absorbing each impact without breaking its deep, steady rhythm. The storm raged, but within, my course remained true. The air in the room, normally heavy with the scent of old money and stale ambition, felt unnaturally still that morning, a quiet I had deliberately orchestrated. Across the mahogany table, Daniel and Sarah sat, their usual bluster replaced by a forced composure, an unease like ripples on a seemingly calm surface. They'd invited me, expecting an apology or a plea for reconciliation, but the heavy file I placed between us, a custom-bound dossier, with a simple embossed cover, told a different story. This, I began, my voice even, is not a negotiation. I watched their eyes, Daniel's flicking to the file, Sarah's darting to Daniel, both seeking a read, a weakness. They wanted to outmaneuver me, just as they had tried to undermine my leadership and seize control of the company we had built. Their scheme, detailed in Section 2's filings, was a meticulously crafted legal and financial maneuver designed to strip me of my shares and push me out entirely. They had miscalculated, however, believing my silence was weakness, when in fact it was the quiet before the tide. I opened the file to a notarized copy of a trust agreement dated 6 months prior, irrevocably assigning all my shares to an independent, offshore blind trust with precise instructions for their dispersal should any attempt be made to seize them. It was a preemptive strike, a legal bulwark I directed the moment I sensed their initial predatory shift. Their faces, usually so quick to smug confidence, drained of color. Sarah gasped, a small, choked sound. Daniel's jaw tightened, his usual bluster replaced by the raw, exposed fragility I had anticipated. The evidence wasn't just the trust, it was the accompanying financial audit, meticulously cross-referenced with their own company expenditures, clearly showing the diversion of funds they had hoped to blame on me. Page after page of time-stamped emails, authenticated digital signatures, and bank transfer records laid bare their coordinated efforts to manipulate the books and orchestrate my corporate expulsion. They thought their machinations were hidden in the deep, but I had charted every current, every undertow. The shares are safe, I explained, gesturing to the documents, and now irrecoverably beyond your reach. The trust agreement stipulates that in the event of any hostile takeover attempt or legal challenge from either of you, those shares are immediately liquidated and the proceeds donated to a specific list of charitable foundations with public disclosure of the donors and the circumstances necessitating the donation. Their carefully constructed future, built on my exclusion, crumbled before their eyes. Their desperation, a frantic scramble for excuses, was palpable, but there was no argument against the ironclad precision of the law. I outlined my next chapter, a new venture already gaining traction, a clean break from the toxicity and deceit. My boundaries are clear, and my agency, absolute, I stated, a finality in my tone that permitted no retort. The past was a closed loop, the evidence laid bare, the future unburdened. They had thought they could outswim me, navigate my depths, and claim what was mine, but they forgot. I am the ocean itself,